Hey, it's Tommy. Let me tell you something that could save you $10,000 or more over the life of your car. After 35 years of tearing apart engines, rebuilding them from scratch, and watching people make the same mistakes over and over again, I finally decided to put together everything I know about keeping an engine alive for as long as humanly possible. Every single day, cars roll into my shop with the same sad story, the owners complaining that their vehicle feels sluggish, the fuel economy has fallen off a cliff, and the engine idles so rough they can feel it in their teeth. They almost always think it's just age, that the engine is on its last legs and they're staring down the barrel of a $5,000 replacement because another shop told them it was just normal wear and tear. But here's what they're not telling you. Most of the time, it's not the engine's fault at all, but rather the result of years of slow, creeping neglect from following a bare minimum maintenance schedule that was designed to sell cars, not make them last. An engine doesn't just get old, it gets clogged, choked and starved of the essential things it needs to run properly, and today I'm going to show you exactly how to reverse that damage and bring your engine back to life. I've developed a system over the decades, a ritual if you will, that I perform on nearly every single engine that comes into my shop for anything more than a simple tyre rotation. It's not one magic trick or some secret additive that only mechanics know about, but rather a comprehensive process that cleans out the gunk, restores the flow of air and fuel, and brings back that smooth, responsive power you thought was gone forever. This isn't about expensive parts or complicated overhauls that require thousands of dollars in labour, but about restoring the engine's core functions that most mechanics completely ignore because there's more money in replacing parts than in properly maintaining them. Stick with me until the end, because what I'm about to share will save you thousands of dollars and completely change the way you think about your car's engine forever. Number 1. The full system decontamination. Before I even lay a wrench on the oil drain plug, I start with a deep internal cleaning of the entire engine, which is essentially like a full detox for your car. Over tens of thousands of miles, two silent killers are constantly at work inside your engine sludge and carbon deposits, and most people have never even seen these things because they're hidden deep inside where you can't see them without taking things apart. Sludge is that thick, black, tar-like substance that forms when old oil breaks down from intense heat and oxidation over time, and it's absolutely nasty stuff that slowly clogs the tiny oil passages designed to lubricate critical components like your bearings, camshafts and valve train. When those passages get blocked, even partially, metal starts grinding on metal without proper lubrication, and that's when the real, irreversible damage begins to accumulate inside your engine. I once had a car come into my shop that had its oil light flickering at idle, and the owner had already been told by two different shops that he needed a completely new engine because the oil pressure was too low. When I pulled the valve cover off that engine, it wasn't shiny metal I saw underneath, but a solid cake of black sludge that looked like someone had poured tar inside the engine. The oil pump pickup screen, which is the little strainer that sucks oil up from the pan, was almost completely blocked with this thick, gooey mess. After a careful, multi-step cleaning process, that engine ran perfectly with normal oil pressure, and no new parts were needed at all. That's how serious sludge buildup can be. Carbon deposits are the other silent killer, and they're the hard, baked-on residue from gasoline combustion that coats your fuel injectors, intake valves, and pistons over time, strangling performance and efficiency until your engine can barely breathe properly. So, the very first thing I do is an engine flush. But I'm not talking about the kind the quick lube places try to sell you for $30 as a cheap add-on service while you wait in the lobby. I use a professional-grade solvent-free flush that's specifically designed to safely dissolve sludge and varnish without damaging the delicate rubber seals throughout the engine or dislodging large chunks that could break loose and cause even bigger problems downstream. I pour it into the old oil, let the engine idle for about 10 to 15 minutes, while the chemical circulates through every oil passage in the engine and allow it to break down those deposits and suspend them in the old oil so they can be completely drained out when I pull the plug. While there's a lot of debate about engine flushes in the automotive community, a quality flush is one of the best things you can do for a reasonably maintained engine because it prepares the engine for the new oil, ensuring the fresh oil stays cleaner for longer. While the flush is working its magic in the oil system, I simultaneously attack the fuel side of the equation by adding a high-concentration bottle of fuel system cleaner directly into the gas tank. I'm not talking about the cheap stuff you find at the gas station counter for $3. that promises to clean your entire fuel system, because those products are mostly just solvents and alcohol that won't do anything meaningful for the hard, baked-on carbon that's really causing your performance problems. I'm talking about a cleaner with a high percentage of polyethyramine, or PEA, which is the only chemical detergent that has been scientifically proven in laboratory tests to be strong enough to actually dissolve those stubborn carbon deposits from fuel injectors, intake valves, and combustion chambers. A clean fuel injector delivers a fine atomized mist of fuel that burns efficiently and completely, while a dirty injector sputters and dribbles fuel in uneven droplets, leading to poor combustion, lost power, increased emissions, and terrible fuel economy that gets worse over time. One treatment with a quality PE cleaner can restore that factory spray pattern and make a noticeable difference in throttle response within a single tank of gas. Have you ever used a fuel injector cleaner and actually felt a real difference in how your car drives afterward? Let me know in the comments which brand you used and what kind of results you experienced, because I'm always curious to hear what's working for people out there. Number 2. Restoring the engine's ability to breathe. An engine is essentially a big air pump that sucks in air, mixes it with fuel in precise proportions, ignites that mixture with a spark, and pushes out the exhaust gases that result from combustion. And the more efficiently it can perform this breathing cycle, the more power it makes and the better fuel economy you get. But over time, the engine's airways get clogged with all sorts of gunk from oil vapours, dust that makes it past the air filter, and other airborne contaminants, and its ability to breathe properly becomes severely compromised without you even noticing because it happens so gradually. So the next step in my process is a complete respiratory treatment that addresses every single component in the air intake system, from the air filter all the way to the intake valves. I start with the throttle body, which is the butterfly valve that opens and closes when you press the gas pedal, controlling exactly how much air enters the engine at any given moment. Over time, oil vapour from the crankcase ventilation system and other airborne contaminants build up around the throttle plate and on the inside walls of the housing, creating a sticky black coating that restricts airflow at idle and causes a rough, stumbling sensation that makes your car feel like it's about to stall at every red light or stop sign. On modern cars with electronic throttle bodies, which is pretty much everything made in the last 20 years, this build-up is even more critical because the computer has to constantly adjust the throttle position to compensate for the restricted airflow, sometimes causing erratic behaviour, hesitation when you first press the gas, or even triggering a check engine light. Using a dedicated throttle body cleaner spray and a soft cloth that won't leave fibres behind, I carefully wipe away all of that black sticky grime from both sides of the throttle plate and the entire inside of the housing, which is a simple 10 to 15 minute job that can make a night and day difference in how smoothly the engine idles and responds to your inputs. Next, I clean the mass airflow sensor, or MAP, which is a tiny, incredibly delicate sensor that sits right after your air filter in the intake tube and measures the exact amount of air entering the engine using a heated wire or film element. The engine's computer uses this precise airflow information to calculate exactly how much fuel to inject to maintain the correct air-fuel ratio for clean, efficient combustion. But if the MAF sensor gets dirty from microscopic dust particles and oil vapours that make it past the air filter over time, it will send inaccurate readings to the computer, causing the engine to run either too lean with not enough fuel or too rich with too much fuel. Either condition leads to hesitation during acceleration, noticeably poor fuel economy, rough idling that you can feel through the steering wheel, and sometimes even a check engine light. I use a specific MAF sensor cleaner that's designed not to damage the delicate sensing elements, and I've personally seen cars gain 3 to 4 miles per gallon in fuel economy just from this simple 5-minute cleaning. After the MAF sensor, I move on to the engine air filter, which is the most basic but often most neglected component of the entire intake system. The air filter's only job is to block dust, dirt, pollen, and other contaminants from entering the engine, where they would cause accelerated wear on cylinder walls and piston rings. But a dirty, clogged filter also restricts airflow and makes the engine work harder to breathe, leading to reduced power output, sluggish acceleration, and decreased fuel economy. Most manufacturers recommend changing the air filter every 12,000 to 15,000 miles under normal driving conditions. But if you drive on dirt roads or in dusty environments, you should check it more frequently. I always inspect the filter by holding it up to a bright light, and if I can't see light passing through the filter material, It's time for a new one because a new filter costs around $15 to $25 and is one of the cheapest and easiest ways to ensure your engine is getting all the clean air it needs. Finally, and this is the one that almost nobody knows about, I check and usually replace the positive crankcase ventilation (PCV) valve, which is one of the most overlooked but most critical components of the engine's breathing system. As an engine runs, some combustion gases inevitably blow past the piston rings and into the crankcase, which is the lower part of the engine where the oil sits. And these gases are full of unburned fuel vapours, moisture from combustion, and acidic byproducts that will contaminate your oil if they're not removed. The PCV system is designed to suck these harmful vapours out of the crankcase and reroute them back into the intake manifold where they can be burned off. The PCV valve itself is a cheap, simple plastic valve that controls the flow of these gases, but it gets clogged with oil residue and sludge over time. When the PCV valve sticks closed, pressure builds up inside the crankcase with nowhere to go, and that pressure will eventually blow out oil seals and gaskets, causing massive oil leaks that can cost thousands of dollars to repair. When it sticks open, it creates a huge vacuum leak that throws off the air-fuel mixture, causing a rough idle and poor performance. This is a $10 to $20 part that takes about 5 minutes to replace and can prevent thousands of dollars in seal repairs, yet most people have never even heard of it. Number 3. The lifeblood and the spark. Now that the engine is internally clean and can breathe properly through a restored intake system, it's time to give it fresh lifeblood and a strong spark, which is where we finally do the oil change, but with a few key differences from what the quick lube places do when they're trying to get you in and out in 15 minutes. After draining the old dirty oil that now contains all the dissolved sludge and contaminants from the engine flush treatment, I always install a high-quality oil filter from a reputable brand because this is absolutely not a place to save a few dollars by buying the cheapest filter on the shelf. A cheap oil filter has less filter media inside, which means it can't trap as many contaminants before it becomes saturated and starts bypassing dirty oil right back into the engine where it causes wear. Cheap filters also have poorly constructed anti-drainback valves, which are supposed to keep oil inside the filter housing when the engine is shut off, so that when you start the car again, there's immediate oil pressure available to protect the engine. A cheap filter lets the oil drain back down into the pan overnight, and when you start the car the next morning, it takes several critical seconds for the oil pump to refill the filter and build pressure throughout the system. During those few seconds, your engine is running essentially without lubrication, and that's where a huge amount of engine wear accumulates over time, especially on cold starts. Then I fill the engine with a full, synthetic high-quality oil that meets or exceeds the manufacturer's specifications for viscosity and performance ratings, because the debate between conventional and synthetic oil is completely over at this point. Synthetic is simply superior in every measurable way. Synthetic oil resists breakdown from heat far better than conventional oil, which means it maintains its protective viscosity even under extreme operating conditions. It flows better in cold weather, providing faster lubrication on cold starts when most engine wear occurs, and it contains superior detergent and dispersant additives that help keep the engine clean and prevent sludge formation. I personally stick to a 5,000-mile oil change interval even with full synthetic oil, because even the best oil gets contaminated with fuel dilution, moisture, and acidic byproducts over time. Pushing oil changes to 10,000 or 15,000 miles, like some manufacturers suggest, is just asking for sludge to form and for the oil to lose its protective properties. With the fresh oil circulating through a clean engine, I turn my attention to the spark plugs, which are the unsung heroes of the entire combustion process that most people completely forget about until something goes wrong. Spark plugs have to deliver a powerful, precisely timed, high-energy spark across a gap, thousands of times per minute, in an incredibly hostile environment of extreme heat, high pressure, and corrosive combustion gases, and over time, the electrodes gradually wear down from this constant electrical erosion. As the electrodes wear, the gap that the spark has to jump increases, which requires more energy from the ignition coil and can eventually lead to a weak or inconsistent spark. A weak spark means incomplete combustion, which translates directly to lost power that you can feel when you press the gas pedal, wasted fuel that goes out the tailpipe unburned, higher emissions, and potential misfires that can damage your catalytic converter. I always replace worn spark plugs with high-quality iridium or double platinum plugs, because they last up to 100,000 miles and provide a much more consistent spark throughout their entire lifespan. When was the last time you actually checked your spark plugs? If you can't remember, it's probably time. Number 4. The supporting systems check. An engine doesn't work in isolation. Its performance, efficiency, and longevity are directly tied to several supporting systems that work together to keep everything running at optimal conditions, and ignoring any of these systems is a recipe for disaster. So the final part of my comprehensive engine restoration process is a thorough inspection of all these critical supporting components. First, I inspect the entire cooling system, because if the engine runs too hot, even for just a few minutes, you can warp the cylinder head, crack the engine block, blow the head gasket and cause catastrophic damage that costs thousands of dollars to repair. I check the coolant level in the overflow reservoir and radiator, and I examine the condition of the coolant itself by looking at its colour and clarity. Fresh coolant should be bright and clean, but old coolant becomes dark, murky, and eventually acidic as the corrosion inhibitors break down over time. That acidic old coolant can literally eat away at your engine from the inside out, corroding the radiator, water pump, and heater core. I also carefully inspect all the radiator and heater hoses, squeezing them to check for softness, bulging, or surface cracking that indicates the rubber is deteriorating. A burst radiator hose while you're driving can cause your engine to overheat and suffer permanent damage in a matter of minutes. Next, I give the serpentine belt a very close look, because this single rubber belt runs everything important: the alternator that charges your battery, the power steering pump that makes the steering wheel easy to turn, the air conditioning compressor, and on many vehicles the water pump that circulates coolant through the engine. If that belt snaps while you're driving, you lose all of those systems simultaneously, your battery dies within minutes, and your steering becomes extremely heavy. I carefully examine the entire length of the belt, looking for cracks in the rubber, fraying along the edges, glazing on the contact surfaces, or any chunks missing from the ribs. Because rubber degrades over time from heat exposure and ozone in the air, I recommend replacing the serpentine belt every 6 years, or 60,000 to 80,000 miles, whichever comes first, even if it still looks okay on the surface. Finally, I perform a vacuum leak test using a professional smoke machine, which is a diagnostic step that almost nobody does outside of professional shops, but is incredibly important for diagnosing those frustrating, hard-to-find problems. A vacuum leak is any crack, hole, or loose connection that allows unmetered air to sneak into the engine after the MAF sensor, and it can come from a cracked vacuum hose, a bad intake manifold gasket, or worn throttle body seals. This extra air throws off the carefully calculated air-fuel ratio because the computer doesn't know it's there, causing all sorts of mysterious problems like a high or erratic idle speed, hesitation during acceleration, poor fuel economy, and check engine lights. A smoke machine fills the entire intake system with a harmless visible vapour, and wherever that smoke escapes and becomes visible, that's exactly where your leak is hiding. So there you have it. That's the complete, comprehensive process that I perform on nearly every engine that comes through my shop when someone wants their car to run like new again. It's a full system decontamination to remove years of accumulated sludge and carbon deposits. It's a complete respiratory treatment to restore the engine's ability to breathe freely and efficiently. It's a transfusion of fresh, high-quality fluids and a renewal of the ignition system to ensure clean, complete combustion. And it's a thorough checkup of all the supporting systems that work together to keep everything running at optimal conditions. When a customer picks up their car after this complete service, the difference is immediate and undeniable. The engine is quiet and butter smooth at idle, the throttle response is crisp and instant, and that responsive power they thought was gone forever has returned. This is what real maintenance looks like. It's about being proactive and giving your engine everything it needs to not just survive, but to truly thrive for hundreds of thousands of miles. What's the highest mileage you've ever personally seen on a car that was still running strong? I want to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't get ripped off. I'll see you in the next one.